Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 118 of the Big Time Strength Podcast. I'm super excited today. We have Coach Pat Basil on at Hamilton College, and he's going to have a great episode for us today. I'm really excited to get to him. But before we do that, a couple things. Coach and I are going to record this a little earlier than this, but this is Christmas week. So coming out on December 22nd, Merry Christmas to everybody out there. Hope everybody has a safe holiday, is able to spend it with family. Maybe it's possibly in a different way than usual, but hope you can find yourself having a great time over these holidays and staying safe. It's a special time for everybody. So Merry Christmas from the Big Time Strength crew. And I really appreciate Coach joining us today. This is actually our second attempt. Our first attempt was my fault. I was trying to do it from our home in Liberty here, and our Wi-Fi is not great. And I appreciate Coach joining me again, making time in his schedule to do this again. So before we get to Coach, I wanted to read through, visit our awesome sponsors of the show. Team Builder, I'm going to go off the script with them today and just talk about they're huge for us right here at William Jewell College during this period. For a lot of coaches, this is entering, or by the time this comes out, you're smack dab probably in the middle of remote training time. You're probably not training a whole lot of your athletes. They're all home for winter break. So Team Builder allows us to deliver workouts to them as we go. We don't have to print out packets, get them ready, the week before they head home for Thanksgiving or whatever it was this year. We can adjust on the fly, and we can stay connected with them every day throughout this winter break period, which I know at Jewell here, I know every situation is different. Essentially, every team is going to be in season in the spring. So we're really trying to treat this as like a normal summer period for like a football team or something. So this winter break period is extremely important. Team Builder allows us to really connect with our athletes. Really appreciate Team Builder and Hewitt. If you're interested in their product, please reach out to them. They'll hook you up. Our second sponsor is PowerLift. They are the leading manufacturer and distributor of heavy-duty strength training equipment for collegiate and high school athletic performance centers around the world. PowerLift brings over 20 years of experience, and they are manufactured in their state-of-the-art facility in Jefferson, Iowa. They are proud to support all the coaches making the big time where they are at. Everybody knows PowerLift. They are a staple in our industry, been around for years, just some amazing equipment. And Mike Richardson is the contact for our show. You can reach out to him in the show notes if you are interested in PowerLift. So thank you to Team Builder and PowerLift for supporting us as usual. All right, guys, so let's get to today's show. I want to welcome Coach Pat to the show. Coach, why don't you get us started? Give us a little background of where you've been so far and what you're doing there at Hamilton.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Excited to get rolling here. We've been kind of going backwards. So I've been at Hamilton 2.5 years now. So we just finished going on our third year, just finished the first semester. 2.5 years, started this program not from scratch. There was always somebody kind of around. There was a longtime football coach that had done a great job. He's like a legend up in this area. Anybody who's been around Central New York has heard of Coach 80. So anybody who's from up around our area knows the name Paul 80. So he started our program, as early as the 80s. We had some kind of a strength program. Just kind of built on what he started into more geared toward the whole athletic department and all of our teams, and a little more structured program to really get our kids through in a systemic way where they can all be successful and get through efficiently and effectively, and things that fit their time, because they don't have a lot of it. Before that, I was at my alma mater, Bryant University, for about 3.5 years. Again, helped out with all sports, football, programs for 4 or 5 of my own. That was great because I ended up working for my strength coach that I played for my senior year, Craig Buckley. It was awesome to learn under a guy who knew my background and knew where I was, and I didn't have to try impress him or anything. He knew I didn't know anything, and he walked me through the steps the whole way. So it was awesome to learn under that guy that I had played under, but knew where I was coming in and where I needed to go. So it was an awesome spot to learn and really develop. Before that, I was at Maritime College in downstate New York as both a football coach and a strength coach. Did mostly just football strength, but I also worked with Sarge, started to branch out into some other sports. The second sport I started to work with was sailing. So I would do football in the morning and then have a bunch of sailing kids come in. So that was an adjustment. But it was good to, get a bunch of novices and how do they react, and in that sort of like military type school setting, it was really, I had to think on my feet because it was totally different from whatever I had ever experienced before. And plus getting the experience of working as a sport coach and being on the road recruiting, making calls and doing all that stuff, seeing how the other half lives, really puts things in big perspective, helps me understand the big picture of things. And that's really helped to this day. Before that, did a summer internship with UConn football under Coach Matt Balis, who's now at Notre Dame. It's just awesome to see how he ran things. No stone unturned, nothing unprepared. Everything got walked through just like the uber professional and thorough. It was like to a T how you do it. It was just awesome to see a long-term vet do his thing at such a high level. And it was just awesome to see and, you know, be able to hopefully replicate. Before that was just my senior year at Bryant. When I was done playing, I played football at Bryant. When I was done, just interned with the strength staff. And that's kind of where it got started. And then, 4 years as an athlete under 4 different strength coaches and learned a lot from them. And here we are.
Well, it's a great background. And I do have a follow-up on that. We've had quite a few coaches on this show that, like you said, you didn't start that program from scratch. And we've had several coaches who say, I started this from scratch, from ground zero. So you had somewhat of a foundation there, but like you said, you kind of maybe turned it into more of a systemic model. Just maybe walk me through that. Like what was, did you have any pushback or what was like that, some growing pains along that, just from like maybe a sport coach perspective and student athlete, maybe buy-in or anything like that?
Sure. It was night and day. So the way, if anybody's familiar with the NESCAC, our conference, the Northeast Small College Athletic Conference, we're uber high academic, like elite caliber academics. And then because of that, they want very hands-off season because they got a lot of stuff to do. They got a lot of work. These kids are going to be doctors and lawyers and congressmen and all that kind of good stuff.
Right.
So they want uber hands-off. So it was kind of, you can do some stuff in the in-season, but just free reign in the off-season and do whatever. So that's kind of how the program operated, was very hands-off, very free reign. And it was kind of coach. This is just, I wasn't here yet. From my understanding, it was kind of coach kids as they come in. They still had phones in the weight room, headphones on, the whole, there was no structure, no really rules or policies to put people in the best situation. So it was, if a kid showed up consistently and listened to the coach, they did well. Otherwise, kids would, curl in the squat rack for 4 days a week and all that kind of good stuff. So there was something here, but it wasn't a program. It was a strength. The strength coach was there, but it wasn't a strength program. And that's what we turned it into, is, like we said, being able to get everybody in kind of like a scheduled, efficient way where everybody got their time with their coach on their program and their progression, dedicated to their needs as a team at that time. If they're a novice team, maybe they get better and now they're intermediate, so on and so forth. That wasn't there. So putting that in place was tough from how to navigate the off-season rules, which we thought would be tough. It can't be mandatory. It's totally optional. Actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise. I'm sure we'll touch on that at some point. But navigating kind of that culture of, okay, in season we can do it. In season is more or less Division I. You can do whatever you want. So we'd have team times. They never came in a ton as teams. So it was like, okay, we have women's soccer and, field hockey in, and, 3 basketball guys showed up and they said, well, we can't, hey, sorry guys, we've got 2 teams in here. That kind of getting used to that. You can't do whatever you want, whenever you want, because there's in-season teams and things like that. That was tough. And then just the culture of, there's now some rules to abide by. You have to adjust your schedule. You can't just show up whenever you want, within reason. So adjusting that culturally, then also the idea of, wearing the same color and not wearing green. We're gold and blue, or buff and blue, we call it. Not wearing green shirts and red shirts and having your headphones in, general team culture and pride and safety things. Ultimately, if you can't hear me, if you're doing something stupid and you're going to hurt yourself, you have headphones in, you can't hear me. That's what it is. It's a safety thing.
Yeah.
But all that basic kind of stuff just wasn't there. Who shows up at 3:00? Who shows up at 4:00? What color shirt do you wear? No headphones, that kind of thing. That stuff wasn't there. So putting all of that in place, you want to talk about programming and this and that and this and that. It's like, well, who's showing up at 3:00? Let's start with that. Before we get into the X's and O's and nuts and bolts and long-term periodization and dynamic effort work, it's like, who's coming out on Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Let's start with that. And that's the kind of stuff you forget coming into a program, or even a startup program. It's you want to do these things. You have this like multi-tiered system, and we're going to have this long-term periodization. It's like they don't understand the concept of showing up at a certain time. They've never done it. They've never had to. So, don't lose sight of the forest through the trees. You gotta dig the hole first before you plant a tree. That kind of thing. So those basic first step things you don't expect, and then there you go. You gotta figure it out.
Yeah. Assume nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That sums it up.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm just thinking through that, and I think you hit some really good points there. Do you have a staff with you there, Coach, or is it just you?
I do. I have an assistant, and we have an athletic trainer who's certified, who's awesome. She helps us just kind of spell some hours so we can just not be there all day. Like she'll be there. We'll be able to train while she's in, or go get lunch or something like that. And we're starting to train some sport coaches to help us out. We have 2 coaches that have the USAW and 1 sport coach who is looking to get his personal training certification. Actually, I think he got it. So he wants to learn, and we're trying to teach them how to teach a dumbbell RDL, how to teach a goblet squat. So if a kid comes up and asks, how do I do this? Here, sport coach, you know how to do this stuff. Go coach them. And it's like trying to develop another staff member that way.
Yeah. I think that's a great point is, and we've had to kind of do a little bit of that this year as well, of getting sport coaches involved, but training them to speak the same language as you is important, because it ran into some issues where we're, a lot of sport coaches think they know everything there is to know about the weight room, right? So like we've had some even assistant sport coaches come in and tell our athletes one way to do things, which isn't necessarily wrong, but it's not the way we would have normally taught it or what they've heard before. So it doesn't click with them from a cue standpoint. It just confuses them. So that's an issue we ran into this semester. But I do want to talk about just other challenges you might have. So we kind of talked a little bit already about just kind of starting the program and everything. But are there any other challenges, hurdles you've had to really navigate through during their time there, or maybe previous stops?
And that was year 1 of getting everything set. I could say one thing I've learned, you're not going to be able to sell everybody. I came in with the unwavering belief that, and I still believe this, that if everybody gives the weight room a chance and they start to see gains, they will be hooked. Yeah, you can sell the weight room on everybody. They just need to get a chance. Everybody likes getting stronger. They just don't know it yet. And I found that even when some kids do get in there, start to make progress, if they lose interest or they don't really want to be there, they're gone. And thinking back, it was no different in Division I. We had kids that would, train all year round, then go home and do nothing. And we've all had those kids, right? I'll give you an example. We were there in the summer, and we don't keep our kids for the summer at Bryant. So kids would go home. 1 or 2 kids would stay for classes, or they would work or something like that. So we had a kid, one sport, had them all year, trained all that. They didn't love the weight room, but they did it and all that. So they worked in the library in our IT department, in the library, which at the time was a stone's throw across from the weight room. So that kid went to work in the library every single day in the summer, never once came to the weight room. So this is a Division I kid, trained with us all year, literally walked past the weight room every single day and never came in. So if you think it's any different at your school, it's not. And we all have these kids, Division I, Division III. Look, if you have a kid all year and they're in the weight room, they don't want to be there, they're just going to wait until May to stop showing up. If in here, maybe you get them in the fall, they're just going to wait until December to stop showing up. It's the same thing. So not everybody loves the weight room as much as you do. And you have to think a lot of our kids they came to Hamilton to go on to be doctors and researchers and molecular biologists that are going to create the next COVID 2024 vaccine, right? That's what these kids are going to do. They didn't come to school to lift weights. They came to school to do these amazing things, play their sport, and whatever else happens on top of that, like maybe lifting weights fits in there. For a lot of our kids, they're all in on everything we do. But some kids just, they want to do school, they want to do their sport, other things, and like the weight room just doesn't fall in there. And that's something I've had to learn and accept and understand, that it's not personal, it's not anything about the program, it's just that's what it is. If you think it's any different anywhere else, it's really not. So I think that's one lesson that I've learned, is that it's not that kids are lazy, it's not that, it's just the way it is. It's really no different than it is anywhere else.
Yeah, just as you told the story about a kid walking by the weight room, working on campus, we have kids like that here. So like that story hit home with me. So I think that's a great point. Something I have to remind myself and my staff, especially freshmen coming in, where like you say these, they don't get it, whatever that might mean. They're problem, they show up late, this and this, and it's so easy just to write those kids off right out of the gate. It's like, oh, he doesn't get it, we need to get rid of him, he's a bad apple. But one, he's probably 18, learning a lot, and two, the weight room might not be that important to him. Just to remember that, I think it's a great point. Wish it was. I wish everybody did love it, but
yeah,
that's just the reality. That's a great point.
Somebody made a great point on Twitter. I think somebody tweeted me, I retweeted it, and somebody commented, it was like, the first thing to ask is, what am I not making clear? Or it's like, what, it goes back to extreme ownership. It's not that they're doing something wrong. It's, what am I not giving them to make them interested, or, whatever it is. You always, if you start with this, pointing the finger at somebody else, you can't solve any problem. If you turn around and say, what can I adjust to maybe attract them? Then you have a shot. This is kind of a tidbit I thought was pretty applicable.
That's great. A good thing from Twitter. That's great. Sometimes it's hard to find sometimes.
Oh, for sure. I know that.
That's awesome. Let's talk a little training, Coach. What's your training philosophy there? How are you getting your kids stronger, faster, all that?
Sure. So we have I kind of poo-pooed the 3-tiered and advanced model, but we kind of have a 3-step system, you could call it, of novices, intermediates, and more advanced, of how do we progress through and what team gets what, and then adjusted to logistics. So one thing I've really done is really shortened our lifts. Our lifts at most take 45 minutes at the absolute max, and that's an off season. The only ones who go, I'd say, a little longer is football, because they don't lift as a team. They float together and they kind of like make their own little pods throughout the day. And because they're not sandwiched by another team, sometimes they'll take a little longer because they have the time. And once in a while, I'll throw in like 1 or 2 extra things for them because they have that time. They're not really capped. So it's like at 9, 10, 11 is kind of like that dead period for every college team or every program. We'll see different sports floating in. There might be 3 kids in there. There might be 13 kids in there. But the benefits having that, those teams that do float, is they have all the time in the world. They're not limited by equipment. So if there's like 5 kids in there at that dead time, they have every piece of equipment available to them. So you can kind of get a little creative and do some fun stuff programming-wise with them, because they have the time and they're not limited by space or bodies or any of that logistical stuff. So they're the only ones that'll go over 45 minutes. Most are done in 45 minutes or less. Usually that includes a warm-up. So it's pretty short, probably anywhere from 6 to 8 total things. Your 1AB, 2AB, all that. And even less in season. Our in-season lifts probably take about 30, 35 minutes at the absolute most. Like our softball girls are absolutely awesome. They will finish any lift in 37 minutes. You could tell them to go run a marathon, and they will figure out a way, 37 minutes on the dot, to get it done. And just super efficient, no nonsense. They get to work, and they put up some crazy numbers. It's great. So as far as who gets what, basically is the team a novice team? Are they an intermediate team, or are they an advanced team? Before you look at a sport, before you look at the energy demands of the sport or anything like that, it's where are they as a trainee? Have they never lifted before? They have a little bit of experience, or they have a lot of experience. And before we look at anything in terms of specificity, it's where they at. You got to meet them where they're at. So if you get, say, like a freshman soccer player who's never lifted before, they're going to be a novice. They need, 3 sets of 6, 3 sets of 8, go up for 4 weeks so you realize you're not going to die. So that's my goal with them is, okay, let's lift. Let's do something you can execute well and feel good about, and do another rep each week or do 5 more pounds each week for 4 weeks, and let's do that again. Let's switch the exercise, do it again. So our novice teams will do the same thing for 4 weeks straight with a 12, 10, 8, 6. 3 sets, 12, 10, 8, 6, so on and so forth. Switch the drill, do it again. And just that basic progressive overload where they can go in and say, okay, I've done this, I feel good about it. But also, we don't have to coach them new stuff every single week. So when I was at Bryant, we did new stuff every 2 weeks just because I how many different times of rows do you do? You do dumbbell rows. I can't do dumbbells row again. They're going to get bored. We have to do cedar rows. We got to do incline rows. It was like, do you really get the most out of the exercise if you really change it twice a week? Like me in my own training, I will stick with something until it stops working. I will stick with a movement for 6 months if I can continue to make progress with it. So I'm like, why is it any different for these 19-year-old kids? It's not. So especially if our novices, they'll do something similar, one, to build confidence so they understand it, but they can just go. So if we have a team that floats, let's take soccer, for example. Like I have a men's soccer kid who's a freshman, never lifted. I can show him on week 1 what to do. Week 2, he's got a pretty good idea. We kind of coach him up as he goes. But week 3 and 4, he's pretty self-sufficient. So it helps us not have to babysit every single kid that comes in. It gives them the confidence to be able to be a little self-sufficient. And it gives them the progressive overload they need. Because at that point, they need consistency and progressive overload, right? As a novice, it gives them exactly what they need. So it's a win-win-win across the board. So that's our novice group. Once they kind of get a little bit of mastery and they can put up, a little bit of decent weight, like for example, for men who can bench 1 1/4 of their body weight, if they can bench their body weight 5 times, that's our minimum. So another thing we do to start to progress them is we have our strength standards. So we have a minimum, a goal, and then like an exceptional for kids who, want to put up big numbers. So our immediate goal is 1, movement mastery, to be able to execute well, but then 2, be able to hit those strength minimums. So, bench your body weight 5 times, front squat 1.5 body weight, back squat 1.7, whatever the math comes out to. We have a whole chart on it. Trap bar, double, or whatever our numbers are. And we've kind of come up with standards for different exercises. Like an RDL isn't on there, but we want our females to be able to RDL 95 pounds within 4 to 6 weeks. They should be able to 95 for reps. If they can do that, they're doing pretty good. Then ultimately the goal, which would be our next step, is to do 135 for reps flawlessly. So if they have gotten to that point where they can RDL 135 for reps, they're in that goal, or it's color coded green. We call it in the green. So if they're in the green, we would say they're a pretty solid intermediate there, or even getting close to advanced. And if you're well over that, I mean, you're just doing some cool stuff at that point. So it's movement mastery, progressive overload, hitting your minimums. We'll give you an example of how we know that works. So we track maxes for different sports. And women's lacrosse 2 years ago, all of their team was in like mostly yellow. So yellow meaning they hit the minimum of what they need to be. A couple of greens, sprinkled in throughout there. Their injury rates were like, they might not have missed a single game due to soft tissue injury. And they're not squatting 300 pounds. At the time, they weren't doing anything crazy weight-wise. It's just like really good movement mastery, hit the strength minimums, and they were in fantastic shape. They did they have like a lot of captain's practices and stuff in the fall. They do a lot of like tempo runs, interval runs that will kind of help design with them. So they were in fantastic shape. They crushed their run tests in the spring. They move well, and they hit their strength minimum. So they're strong enough and in fantastic shape, and they just didn't get hurt soft tissue wise. So it's like, this is our goal for like our novices and intermediates, is just to be strong enough to start. And the only thing you need to get there is consistency and progressive overload. And we've seen that with a number of other teams. They were just kind of the first one where we saw, like, I guess you could say like data, or we had it graphed out, like, here, look at where they're at on the computer screen with the numbers, and then look at the result after the season. There's a correlation there. just being strong enough. It was the first step in kind of like validating what we do with data. And that was pretty cool. So the only difference between novices and intermediates, we start to add in a little more advanced stuff. So like more barbell work. We'll start to pull from the ground as opposed to just a trap bar. We'll start to teach them conventional, sumo, front squat, go to back squat, or block. We've done a lot more box squat. Some teams will exclusively box squat, but just go from just 5 more pounds to start more percentage-based work. Start to add in more true plyometric work where you're trying to, ground contact time and not just different kinds of box jumps and landings, and just a little more advanced but still basic stuff, if that makes sense. That was an oxymoron, but like dumbbells to barbells, non-counter movements to counter movement jumps, just kind of that next step. And a lot of athletes just stay in that range for a long time. Go from a yellow, go to a green. So a green would be like a double bodyweight back squat for a male. Get him from that 1.5, progressing to a double bodyweight squat. Now he's advanced. So that's really it. So it's, how do we progress a team? It's like, okay, do they go from the novice program that they do well? Okay, they've been on there for a semester. Their numbers are pretty good. Now they're an intermediate team. So it's less about the sport. It's where they at training wise, where they as a trainee. And then after that is our advanced stuff. We'll really start to do more kind of a conjugate concurrent model where we'll do like dedicated dynamic effort stuff. We'll start to throw in some accommodating resistance. We feel it's appropriate. And we'll start throwing in just some cool variations because we can. We'll start to do like clusters, and we save all the fun stuff that we put on Instagram and all that good stuff. Those are our advanced team. That's the very last step. So it's not like we have played around with like the dynamic effort stuff earlier with some good, some like not bad results, but like, did we really get what we want out of that? But that's kind of the progression is, just basic intermediate, basic stuff, a little more advanced, and then we start to sprinkle in the dedicated dynamic effort work and kind of that conjugate stuff. We'll start to rotate exercises a little bit. But that really comes in last with our most advanced teams.
I love it. I think makes total sense. And I love how you have it broken down in kind of your levels there. And it's giving those kids like just markers to try to hit. I imagine that's been very beneficial. So I guess one thought I have is like, do you ever take kids back down? So like if a kid gets up to maybe intermediate level in the spring or something, and then comes back in the fall and he's lost a lot because he didn't do anything all summer or whatever it is, do you have to restart kids a lot, or are you able to kind of hit the ground running a lot over kind of break periods? How do you handle that?
It's a good question. We have not an expectation. We kind of go a ballpark of where they're at, like based off the spring. So like the spring to the fall, let's say. And let's say a team started as a novice. By the end of the year in May, they were a pretty solid intermediate group. Let's say we come back, a bunch of kids look good. They look like they've been training and some don't. We always come back pretty basic because basic can be scalable. If you do like dumbbell RDLs, 3 sets, 8, your advanced kids can do 120s for the dumbbells and your beginner kids can do 25s. So we kind of just keep those first few weeks still pretty basic regardless of where they're at, and just coach's eye ballpark it. Okay, are they how far off from the spring are they? Do they still look pretty good? And then make that judgment from there. If like, hey, we're crushing dumbbell RDLs with hundreds, okay, we're in a good spot. They did what they were supposed to do over the summer. If not, then that adjusts the next 4 weeks or so on and so forth. So we'll program like 4 weeks out, depending on the team, so on and so forth. So we think, okay, after that first block, they're kind of in that novice intermediate wishy-washy. We'll do stuff that, geared a little bit toward the medium, but the more advanced kids can scale. So like, some kind of a chin up, but like you can do weighted if you're good at it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll even put like, chin ups, whatever it is, 4 sets of 5, band if needed, weighted if easy or something like that. And it's like, you figure it out, whatever you need. So if we need to, we'll scale it down a little bit, but there's always a little bit of flexibility because there's going to be some switching of levels a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's great. That makes sense. I just have some athletes that can kind of ride that wave. So I was curious on how you handle that. That makes total sense. Coach, what are some of maybe professional development resources you would look into? Books, articles, some of the podcasts you really like?
Books have been fantastic. I mean, if you really want to take a deep dive into something, go to the author's direct page and, read it. Like a few years ago, I took a deep dive into the West Side stuff. And I think everybody should, whether you like start to box squat and buy a pair of briefs is up to you, but everybody should at least read the West Side Book of Methods and start to understand the concept of special exercises. And, it really, what it is it's specificity. And the idea of a special exercise, training a specific thing for a specific movement. Now, obviously, West Side is going to be tailored toward powerlifting, your bench squat and deadlift. But you can take that concept of special strength training and special exercises and apply it to anything. This is an advanced thing, but, you look at sprinters doing like the 3-inch super heavy step-ups. Well, that's a special exercise for a sprinter, that kind of thing. Or even like you could see like sled sprints, like towing the sleds or towing a chain. You could see that as a special exercise. It's the same idea of special strength training and a special exercise. Resistance applied to the action of accelerating sprinting. So it's like, yes, it's an acceleration drill, kind of a speed acceleration thing, but see it as special strength training as a special exercise. Then the idea of like dynamic effort work as a concept. That's something I really didn't do a ton of until I started to look into the West Side method of like, you can move sub-max weights at maximal intent and improve your force production and then improve your maximal strength numbers by moving sub-max weights. And the idea of that and training all three models or all three methods concurrently is absolutely huge. Because then you go back to, your typical Western, hypertrophy, strength, power. Well, it's the said principle. What gets trained gets better, and what doesn't, you lose it. You lose it. So if you train hypertrophy, you get no max strength, no power. If you train strength, you get no hypertrophy, no power, and then you lose it all. You peak for power core at the end, but what happens to the other two? It's right. A D model, not a training model. So the idea of training all three things concurrently is the right way to do it, in my opinion, when they're ready.
Right.
So touching on the object of books, I learned that from the West Side books. Another fantastic one is just Twitter or social media in general. People share a lot of great stuff. And I've learned a lot of great stuff just by seeing one person throw something out there, but then like 5 or 6 other people also kind of say the same thing. And you say, you're onto something there. Or like, maybe you disagree, but then if 5 or 6 other people say the same thing, it's like, maybe I should look into that. Or maybe there's, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
So social media is a fantastic learning experience if you follow the right people. And then now they got, webinars and courses and all those kinds of things. But, good old-fashioned books are always a good go-to, but social media is fantastic. If you're not on social media, it's a huge missed opportunity. I'd say that's the easiest thing people can do. It's the best resource you can use right now is social media. Get on Twitter, get on Instagram, and start following good people and just listen and read what they have to say. Because you can go from there.
Yeah. Is there anybody on top of your head that you like to follow? Puts always stuff.
One person that I challenged the wrong way, but I didn't want to agree with is obviously Mike Boyle. The idea of not squatting, all this single leg. When I'm 23 and I got it all figured out, I don't know about all that stuff. But as soon as you start to read it and you learn more, you're like, oh, Uncle Mike's onto something there. So Mike Boyle's a great place to start, and then it's other guys chime in with similar ideas and things like that. But that's a great example of Mike Boyle. Let's see who else. People who share good stuff. I know the Elon staff, Nick DeMarco down there shares a lot of the stuff they do. They're very generous with information. Kier Wenham Flat, the rugby guy, he's hysterical to follow, but he puts a lot of different stuff out. But those are the kinds you have to, what you should really seek out is people you disagree with. People you say, I don't know about that. Or like, I don't like that. But go follow, go read it, what he has to say, and keep an open mind because you're going to learn something. Like I did with, Boyle and the single leg kind of stuff. You have to think critically and challenge yourself because if somebody has had success with another way, there's something there. You can't just dismiss it. You can't disagree with it and pretend it doesn't exist and bury your head in the sand. You have to critically say, what is it there? Success leaves clues, right? So find some people you don't necessarily agree with, go follow them, keep an open mind, and just ask questions. You can, and that's the great thing about social media, is you can go DM somebody and ask them, like, hey, how did you get onto this idea? Or have you tried this with whatever application? And you start a conversation. Like, here's how I learned this. I was in the same boat. And a lot of people tell the same thing, I was in the same boat. I didn't know about it. I took the deep dive and now I'm all in on it. So, people were in your shoes. They tried it, changed their thinking. You can do the same thing. And that's the great thing about social media. It's all out there, but people are accessible. And a lot of times they will help you if you ask.
100%. That's great. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time. Again, this is our take 2 on this. So I really appreciate you hanging in there and doing this again. And let's wrap this up with 4 quick ones. And then we'll get you on the rest of your day. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. What's your favorite office snack?
Protein shake and a piece of fruit.
Nice. What's your go-to fruit?
Banana or an apple.
Yeah, I'm with you. What's the best piece of coaching advice you've ever received?
That is a fantastic question. It's going back to they don't know how much they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Starts with relationships.
Yeah. Love it. What's you got 15 minutes to train for yourself. What are you doing?
Warm up, 2 accessory movements, main lift done.
What's your main lift?
Squat.
So are you a West Side? Are you a powerlifting guy? You got your briefs on and you mentioned it.
Not briefs. I know. I've always been raw. Been raw.
Cool.
But,
awesome. All right. Last one. Maybe a small school coach who you think does a great job deserves a shout out.
That's an easy one. That's Craig Buckley, my mentor at Bryant University. 3,000-4,000 kids. Go follow Coach Buck. He'll get you going.
At Bryant?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, Coach, this has been great. And I know you have, we talked before, you have some products that you have for sale and stuff. So why don't you take a second and kind of plug what you got, where they can find it, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure. So the things I have are available on Twitter, my Instagram. I have links in my bio. Just go ahead and tap on. I'll tweet it out every once in a while. But what it is, it's educational stuff for younger coaches or anybody else who just wants to simplify what they're doing. So my main seller is I have a program design manual, and what that is just it's basically an ebook with a bunch of fill-in templates and examples of programs of how to put a workout together, and it's how to sift through all the unnecessary nonsense you'll find in a textbook and the key takeaways you need to know to develop your own programs now. So the idea is like a young coach coming off a GA or an internship or a sport coach that wants to learn more, they'll be able to read this, see how I built the templates, understand the information, plug in their exercises, and go. So it's not a crash course, but it's the super condensed everything you need to know to write a halfway decent program or a decent program right now without going through a whole university course or anything like that. So it's educational stuff for coaches. Then I have examples of like full year off-season programs of how I would apply that kind of stuff. And then a new one is our home workout guide. So if you're stuck in quarantine and you got some household stuff but you're not really sure how to put a workout together, it's a whole workout guide with kind of the same idea. Fill in your blank templates, how I would build a home workout program. It's just educational stuff for coaches or anybody who wants to learn more about strength and conditioning and program design and all that kind of good stuff.
Nice. Right on, Coach. Those are great. And we have Coach's social media information in the show notes. So if you're interested in reaching out to Coach, you can find all that there. Coach, again, thanks so much. I appreciate you joining us. I hope you and your family have a great Christmas, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Same to you guys.